am Jason Sisneros, also known as the Tattooed Guru, the purveyor of all things common sense, the king of the Misfit Nation, and a legend, baby, in my own mind, Jay. In my own mind. So we are here tonight to talk about some very important things. You're going to be super excited to meet my guest. I'm sure most of you that are in business or have been in business or thinking about business have heard of this man. He is one of my heroes. As I mentioned on the pre-show, that I was going to bring one of my top three, right? You hear me talk a lot about Jay Abraham, Keith Cunningham, Tony Robbins as being some of the most influential people in my life with the greatest content. And Jay has impacted my life in so many ways, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But if whenever anybody asks me, and I mention you, Jay, a lot on my show, whenever everybody asks me, like, who did you learn from? Where did you get that information from? And it started with a Jay Abraham book, even before Tony and before Keith. And the name of that book was called Getting Everything You Can Out of All You've Got. Right. And it taught me the concept of not even so much about what was in the book. It was really about how to think about business and how to think outside of a box to say, you know what, just because I'm a poor kid, I came up, with my adopted father being a bad guy, gangs, selling drugs, fighting, collecting money, doing all the things that I did in the beginning of my life. Even with all of that, I could learn how to think about traditional business. And Jay taught, in that book, he talks a lot about how to joint venture and how to take your talents and your skill sets to be able to apply them in a way that if you don't have capital, which I didn't, and nobody would have lent me any money anyway, which I wouldn't have either, so you have to scrap it out. You have to hustle. And it's so relevant and so prevalent in today's day and age, what's going on in the economy, what's happening, that this conversation, you go all the way back to another book of his that he wrote called The Sticking Point Solution, which was, it was a long title. It was 9 ways to move your business from stagnation to stunning growth in tough economic times. And you wrote that back in 2009.
That's right. Yes,
2009. And he also wrote another book that really transformed the way that I look at business. And it was a book called 93 Extraordinary Referral Systems. And that changed my life in so many ways. To start looking at business as a way where I would fall in love with the outcome of the customer and then work really, really hard to earn their business to stay with me. And then usually there's clusters, right? There's clusters of people that hang out with each other and they would let each other know. And I found that drastically reduced my acquisition costs on the advertising side and really turned it into a business where I thought I wanted to grow up to be Tony Robbins. When I realized I didn't, I realized that I could use my skills and my talents to be able to really serve my employees and teach them, and we all fall in love with the outcome of the client, and then that would sustain our businesses through a referral program. It's a fantastic book. And then Jay is so giving of his time. He's so giving of his information. He's so wise, and I've been a platinum partner and sat in many audiences just listening to him. And frankly, sometimes, Jay, I just shook my head at some of the questions you got. I go, do you know who you're talking to? Like, could you ask a better question about?
That's fine. Oh, I didn't know you were a platinum partner. That's fun.
Yep. Yeah. I was a platinum partner. I heard you speak many times, but in giving, you put out a series called 50 Shades of Jay, and there's, again, this day, and we're going to get to this, and I'm going to start asking you some questions. But in this day and age where people have such short-sighted, they're like, I want to watch a 15-minute or a 15-second video, and I want to absorb how 50 years or 60 years of business wisdom in short amounts of time. Can you just shorten it up for me, Jay? Yeah. And frankly, your the depth of your vocabulary, the depth of your thinking, that has always been an inspiration to me and why I have loved following you. So I'm excited for my audience.
Nice. Thank you very much. That's very gracious.
You bet. And I'm so excited for my audience to get to know you. I also I'm going to say it now, and I'm going to say it at the end of the show, that he's got something coming up called What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. It's a virtual summit that's going to be scheduled for Thursday, the 28th of May. And I'm going to highly suggest that everybody that knows me jumps into that virtual summit. You're going to be super happy that you did. So Jay, welcome to the show, sir. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my honor.
It's my pleasure. And again, I cannot say just publicly, I've told you multiple times, to your face, how much I appreciate you, but I just want everybody listening to know that there's very few people on the face of this planet that I respect more than this man, and the wisdom and the knowledge that he brings, and how giving he is of it. So a lot of your principles have actually found their way into the charities that I work with, and are sustaining and saving a lot of lives.
I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
So Jay, where are you coming to us from?
I live outside of Los Angeles, a very idyllic city called Palos Verdes. It's a peninsula. It's very quiet. Peacocks roam. Horses are all over the place in the street with riders. And it's like Santa Barbara. It's very beautiful, very different than Los Angeles.
I love it a lot. I've got a home down there in Redondo, just down the street from you.
Right.
Which I haven't seen in quite a while, but
Redondo's lovely.
Yeah, Redondo's fantastic. Well, I wanted to ask you a few questions tonight,
please,
because we're in the middle. I say we're in the middle, but hopefully we're towards the end of this thing called a pandemic.
Yes.
And there's been a giant upheaval, like there is throughout history. If people get into history, there's giant upheavals, and within that come ways to profit, and also to succeed and to accelerate their whatever their idea is, their business, or whether they're working for a company. And again, I want to stress to people that it's the way that you think, not necessarily tactical, but strategic. And so I got a series of questions that I would really love to ask you, and
sure,
to get your feedback.
Fire away. I'm here.
So let's start out with the big one. In times of big upheaval, in times of upset, in times of massive shifting, we're approaching 40 million unemployed. We're approaching, 40% of small businesses that have gone out of business already. During this period of time, how do we think? How do we look at this? What do we do?
Well, I am counseling people of all types, sizes, Jason. And what I'm saying to them is pretty much this. You either decide to be a victim or a victor.
Ooh.
You decide to be proactive, strategic, or tactically reactive. You either are in defensive readiness or opportunistic, ethical preparedness. And it divides and conquers. So the first thing is you better figure out where you stand on those two divides. And if you're going to take defense, it's very difficult. It really is very difficult. If you're going to say there is ethical opportunity in every adversity, this is certainly the worst, but this is my fifth downturn. And so I've had to learn to look at where higher performance lies, where opportunity lies, where growth lies, and it lies all around you. But the first thing is to figure out how to make your business preeminent, preemptive, and I guess I'd say prominent. And you have to be able to really understand the mechanism. So, what I tell people is, depending on where you are, Jason, there's many things you can do. First thing is you're selling a product they're either buying or not. So that's very important to figure out, don't you think?
100%.
So if you're selling a product they're not buying, the first question is, are they buying anything related before, during, after, instead of what you sell? If the answer is yes, you have a buyer base, you have a prospect base, you theoretically have marketing knowledge, so you need to partner with people who have those products. If they are buying what you're selling, then the key is, how do you make your marketing, your advertising, your strategy, your business proposition, your competitive advantage superior, not even to just everybody you're competing against, but basically it's got to outperform wherever you were pre the crisis. And that requires you to look at everything you're doing in the terms of what I call performance enhancement. You know this because you read the book. When you read the first book that you cited, Getting Everything, we divide everything into two categories: maximizing and multiplying. Right. First thing is we look at every performance element, every impact point, every leverage point in your revenue system, because most people don't begin to command anywhere close to optimum performance. And there might be, 30, 40 different impact points in your revenue system, each one of which you can make better. If you make, and you know that I work on the geometry of the business, and I'll stop talking in a minute, but I'm on a little bit of a roll, so I'll finish. The key is you find all the ways what you're doing can be made to do better. Your front end, your back end, your engagement, conversion, upsell, downsell, lifetime value. And I'm throwing things out that you can address, but almost any business revenue system can be made better for no investment, no more risk, and it can throw off not just 10%, but you can make 5, 10, 15 elements, each improve 10, 15, 20%. And the combination is an exponential gain in profitability. So when you focus on that, you can make a company that seems stuck, a company that was doing okay, do great, just by demanding more performance of every element in the revenue system. That's the first thing I tell people. So you talk.
Again, I love listening to you. So you talk all you want, but in that optimizing phase, right? Which was when I was in, buying my companies and doing and implementing. First off, I started in the turnaround world, and then, got into acquiring my own companies because I didn't like partners. I don't play well with others, but
okay.
Yeah. And so at the end of the day, when you talk about those optimizing strategies, I would go line by line, because I figured, you know what, if we're selling $1,000 and it's costing us $900 to deliver it, every dollar that I get off of that is an to use your term, right? Exponential return on your investment, because you don't have to sell more to keep more of your money.
That's exactly right. People don't understand, Jason. It is so much easier to increase profit than it is revenue.
Right. So my question would be, because I've run into this, now on the consulting side of the world, where getting people to focus there, why don't they? What have you run across in all of your thousands of experiences? Why do people not focus first on the thing that has the greatest return on investment?
Well, I think there are a number of answers. It's a great question. And I think to answer it simply, they don't even know what they don't know, and they don't know where higher performance lies, number one. Number two, the majority of small and medium business people are two-dimensional thinkers. They just think in terms of revenue minus expense equal profit. If they learn to think like, I would say, a private equity firm or a mutual fund, and they look at the three-dimensional, which is yield. If they look at everything they're doing, not how much it's going to make one time tactically static, but how many times it can be over and over again a revenue stream, it changes the whole mindset. So, I mean, it's just, they don't know how to think differently. And I think I was blessed early in my career by being exposed to such diverse industries and such expansive mentor thinkers that I learned how to think differently, how to act differently, how to transact differently, how to look at the totality, almost a 360 CAT scan look at all the elements of performance enhancement. And if most people don't understand that they even exist, sort of like people didn't understand there were atoms and there were, then the subatomic, and they go to the neutrons and the protons, but they all exist, but no one really talks about it because our world is fixated with getting more likes or getting more, more visitations or more opt-ins. And that's such a limited tactical element of the business building, business growth, and particularly now, the downturn turnaround mindset.
It's almost a vapid way of thinking, and for the most part, I'm going to jump around to some questions because you went there, which is you have so many people pre-pandemic. You had a lot of people that would, for instance, read your book and then all of a sudden they're an expert and they're out teaching your principles and speaking from stages, and they build programs off of your deal. And now a lot of those people have disappeared. I think that was sort of a blessing, cleansing for the internet to get, because these people don't realize, Jay, and you know this more than anybody because you see it firsthand, is that when you take the wrong information from somebody who's a shallow thinker rather than a deep executioner, right, then it can cause damage to your company.
Yeah,
it
does.
And so I look at that and I say, okay, if we're going to be speaking on subjects tonight for people to look for, how do you get exponential growth? One of my favorite things that I heard you say, I think it was in San Diego, when I listened to you, you said you always have to be paying attention to first, second, third order consequences, right? When you push a lever in your business, if it can move 15 things, that's the thing you want to push. Yes. Rather than where are you in the SEO search chain, and yes, how good do your videos look, and those types of things. And so how do you suggest people, I'm not quite sure how to ask the question because I don't want it to be demeaning. I want this to be educational.
Yeah,
what I want people to hear from you is when you're doing this hard work and you're studying your information about execution on these things, that it takes you out of the limelight a little bit. You may have to stay offline for a little while. You may not be at the bar with people. You may have to, sacrifice some of your personal time while people are at home, for the most part still today. What have you found, and what are some strategies that people can execute on deeper thinking, and what are the rewards of that?
Well, this is a complex question. So first thing, you can probably own the bar or 10 bars if you do this right. So it's probably worth staying away for a little while. So the first thing is some philosophy. I was impacted by Socrates, who said that a life unexamined is a life not worth living. Well, you can take it to the entrepreneurial application. A business that's not constantly examined and re-examined on every performance element, tangible and intangible could be just or more valuable, is not worth owning. But you can't, I learned a concept, Jason, that I teach: optimization, highest and best use, and you fill in the blank: highest and best use of time, opportunity, effort, access to the market, interaction with prospects, buyers, capital, intellectual capital, relational capital. The problem with optimization is you can't optimize until and unless you have a broad enough context or scope of understanding of not everything that's possible, but of the spectrum of options, alternatives, possibilities that you can do, and the consequences of each. I learned you can be a linear thinker, you can be a superficial thinker, you can be a critical thinker, you can be a critical strategic thinker, you can be a critical consequential strategic thinker, and each level takes you to a much more expansive grasp of action, reaction. Also, I was blessed, and I try to get everyone to do this. I was blessed in my life by being, ironically, a business transient. I got married very young, had no education, no negotiable skills, and I bounced around, not just in jobs, but through enormous number of industries, different fields, because I was only given percentage, result-based compensation, no salary. And after about 5 different industries, I realized, and this is very pivotal, particularly today, people in one industry still don't have a good idea of how people in other industries think. They don't understand their strategies, their marketing approaches, their business models, their access vehicles, their lead generating conversion approaches, their value added. And I was able, after I was in 5 industries, it's long ago, I've been in over 1,000 industries today and 7,124 sub-industries. And I'm not saying it arrogant, it just gives you a context.
And have created over 4 billion in value. Yeah.
It's more like 21 now, actually.
21.
Yeah, but I mean, but I've been doing it for 40 years, but it's a lot. But what I was going to say is, when you get to look at all kinds of different ways people think and do, you have incredible, I'll use a highfalutin word, optionality.
Mm-hmm.
You have options. When you know 500 different ways to generate leads or convert them, when you know 100 different strategies, when you know how to make your business stand out, differentiate, be preeminent, not in one way, not the way everybody in your industry does it, but totally powerful alternatives. And these powerful alternatives are laughable because they are commonplace in different industries. One of the things, Jason, that I believe is the concept of best practices is a fallacy most of the time, because they're teaching you best practices from a single industry.
Right.
So everyone's following the herd. It's
right.
the best, you're doing it 20% better or worse. So you're getting the best 20%, not of optimal, not of optionality, but just of your industry by and large. And I've been exposed, when you understand that you can look at different industries and you can borrow success approaches, strategies, thought. I call it funnel vision versus tunnel vision. I'm just giving you a few, and you can build on them. You can divert. You can ask me to expand or move on.
Well, I want to give some examples of what that means, because again, I've taken your words and translated them into activities, which then created financial results for me. We've got in the consulting business. And it's funny you say that, because I use this example all the time, is where one of the things that we help change a law firm, several law firms now, what came from the commercial janitorial world, where I owned a business, right? And we took some stuff from solar and we moved it into the medical world. It's you called it optionality. And really what it is, a lot of people look at their experiences and they shove them off, because as they go to start something new, a new job, a new business, they shove off their life experiences as if they weren't necessary. They were only necessary there, but and then now they're antiquated and outdated. But bring all of that to bear and say, how can I apply when I was flipping burgers at McDonald's, and then I got a raise and I went to work, as a secretary. And then I went from secretary to selling real estate. How can you mold all of those things together to think differently? Because what you said, which is the most powerful thing that I love, is if you're just learning from your own industry, you're going to be, I don't want to use derogatory terms, so I'll just stick with the idea that you're going to be 5 to 10% better.
Yeah, it's linear. It's purely
than
linear.
than the worst person in the industry, right?
Well, I'll give you a very provocative thought, because it's a concept that I've been working on for about a year. You probably know this, but if you don't, over my career, and it's just clinical, it's not arrogant, I've been able to identify about 30 separate categories of geometric business/profit growth, every one of which was a portfolio. It wasn't a one-trick pony. There might have been, for example, in the 3 ways to grow business model, there's 28 ways to get more leads or buyers. There's 20 ways to get the size of the order up ethically. There's 15 ways to get people to buy more things more often or get more utility value out of them. But I just had an ADD moment. Wait once. Oh, okay. So I've got 30 plus different categories. And I always wondered, Jason, what is geometry on geometry? Because I just kept finding new separate categories, every one of which could make a difference, not necessarily all combined. And I finally looked it up, and it's very hilarious. Mathematically, this is really fascinating. Mathematically, it's a given. There are 5 or 8 gradients above exponentiality. Hexation, pentation, octation. Brian would know the rest, but I remember them all. But if you can absolutely mathematically go way beyond exponential, and that you can take your business profit performance geometrically and keep iterating it, meaning you can keep adding and adding geometry to it. Why in the world would you ever allow yourself to operate any part of your business, revenue-wise at least, in what I call the incremental zone, if you can do everything in the exponential? And the exponential is very super strategic. It's getting the maximum strategic yield right now. And the maximum strategic yield may not be the most revenue from a single transaction. It's the most lifetime residual revenue from the acquisition of that buyer.
Yes. I love that. It's almost as if you're creating in your optionality, you're creating another algorithm of potentiality for a company.
Yeah, great.
And I love the stacking strategies, because that's what we did when we found a place, you know, in a company. And again, just to translate this back to what that means for people that are watching, it's stop thinking about the fact that you got to pay your bills this month, which is 100% true, but just peel off some time for strategic thinking. And if you need help with where you say, you know, like Jay was saying, if you have a hard time with where do I start to think, pick up his book, right? And attend this summit that he's going to be speaking at, because you'll get one nugget, right? And you'll spend a lot of time in a dictionary, and you're going to expand your capacity for growth if you dig in, right? A lot of times I hear people, Jay speaks over my head. Well, get your head up there a little bit, right? Because we can all expand that prefrontal cortex that we were born with to be able to learn new words and to understand new experiences. And that is the depth of human potential, is in your ability to be able to translate experiences into multiple quadrants. Sorry, I'm getting excited. Multiple quadrants of understanding. Right? Multiple quadrants of understanding. And so as you do that, you start with how to think, get away from the people who have gotten to you to where you are right now. I'm not saying don't leave them as friends, but you have to parse out your mental capacity to start to absorb the information that someone like Jay has to offer you. Because it's not easy to turn your company around. The reason why it's not is because you're a human being. Human beings are very pattern driven. And if you're in your own pattern, how do you see outside of your pattern? How do you get into the observer's chair, right? And you do that by absorbing other people's intellect. And you do that through books and through reading and through reaching outside of your inner circle. So, you know, just to encapsulate a little bit for what people can actually do is to step just away from the thinking of your inner circle and your industry, and start to look at the way that other people are doing things. In other words, you know, like a statement that I think Apple stole from you, which was called "think differently," right? So, all right, so let's move ahead from that. You talk a little bit, I forget which book it was in, but you talk a little bit about strategy clusters, right? Talk to us a little bit about how people can utilize that thinking in their business.
Well, let me talk strategy, because I have to remember how we framed it then. But the one thing I learned early in my career is the majority of business owners are totally tactical. They don't think, they don't play a long game. And so they are always having to play havoc with their cash flow every day, every month, every year. And it's going to be much more exacerbated, much more difficult. I'll simplify it right now. Strategy clusters mean that, well, strategy, first of all, is the long game you're playing. Most people don't realize this, but the only reason to deploy, to utilize, to embrace a tactic should be because it advances and enhances a big long-term strategic goal. And the strategy is the long goal you're playing. It's not the short. It's not, I'm going to run an ad on Facebook. It's not, I'm going to master Twitter. It's the integration of the game that you're playing for the rest of your business life. And it's the mechanism that is going to create your predictable, recurring sustenance as far as revenue, your asset value, meaning your wealth creation, your psychic fulfillment. And if you don't really understand strategy, and strategy is a deep, complex concept, but it's important to know that just like we were talking about people who are susceptible more so to the coronavirus, and that it has a correlation apparently to lack of vitamin D.
Mm.
And if you realize that most people have a lack of strategy,
Mm.
and they're susceptible to today enormous, just enormous travesty to their business because they don't have the resistance to all the threats. And what I say, which is true, now that they're opening up again, Jason, you're going to be as a business owner, and I want to make a point for, by the way, most people think of themselves as entrepreneurs. You may or may not know this. I was involved in the very beginning of Entrepreneur Magazine. When we started, and I don't want to date myself, nobody even knew the definition of the word entrepreneur, nor did they know how to pronounce it. We had to send out self-mailers that had the reproduction of the Webster's Dictionary, phonetic pronunciation, and literal definition. It's come a long way, but there's a misnomer. Most people are proprietors. They're not really looking to create strategic, superior engagement experiences, sustainability, perpetuity with a relationship, even if the relationship has nothing else to monetize, because it has so much more to proselytize for you. There's just all kinds of, I don't want to get you too, I can be very sophisticated or esoteric. So bring me back to concreteness.
So what I want, so the idea here, what you said is that you have to tie, you people don't dig into strategy, right? And this is why we have such an exponential growth, how I was able to build my business. It was all of the things that you're talking about. It's a real world application of your thoughts and the execution strategy to build on that. But here's one of the things that people miss, why they never even understand the idea, which is something that you just mentioned, is they don't understand strategy because they don't know what they're building towards, right? They're not thinking long term. They haven't built out what does their business look like when it's completed. If you think about Legos, right? Legos have a picture on the box that you can look at the entire time going, that's what the completed, optimized Lego looks like. It's a 4,752 piece of a sailing boat. And then you open up the box and you look at, oh my God, there's 7,000 pieces of stuff here that I've got to put together. But then you open up that magic manual in it that has, here's step one, right? Here's step one. But they could have never gotten to step one if they didn't have the concept of the finished product.
Yes, I agree. No, and you're doing a magnificent job of really crystallizing it for people. Here's the tragedy and the corresponding opportunity. Every person watching, whether you're a pre-startup, I call it an accidental or forced entrepreneur, somebody who lost their job and needs very badly to replicate that income and doesn't think they're going to do it with an employer very soon, or you're a startup, or you're an existing business, or you're stuck, struggling, or you're doing well. You can do so much better right away. And I need, before you let me run out of time, to tell you 5 really cool distinctions. They're windows of opportunity. I'll talk about it much more extensively when I'm doing this summit. But I would like to introduce all your people and all your viewers and all your loyal fans to 5 distinctions that are screaming windows of opportunity right now that will close in a matter of months.
Okay. I'd love that. And we're getting to about that time to go to that point. Are you going to talk a little bit about referrals in there, or should I ask you that question ahead?
No, ask me right now, because
okay.
It's something close to my heart.
Okay, got it. So referrals, again, if anybody knows me or anybody has been around me, we focus so much time, effort, and energy on referrals. In fact, when I would buy a company, I would immediately fire the sales staff and offer them a job back as customer service reps, right? And to get the business generating the idea that unless we have the competence and the excellence of the product that we are delivering, we don't deserve a new customer, right? And a lot of companies are spending tons of money on the front end in customer acquisition to get the newest, and I don't mean this derogatory, but the newest dummy through the door because they don't know how bad you suck, right? And as we head into this time of, you're hearing 30 to 40% unemployment, and you're hearing all of these businesses that are going out of business. What I'm telling people to focus on, and what the perfect timing for you to be on the show is to talk a little bit about how. Don't focus on the fact that you could be part of that 30 or 40% unemployed. Don't focus on the fact that you could be, going out of business. It drains your mental capacity to be able to execute on new strategies and tactics, right? And so focus on being part of the employed. What can you do to do that? And then how do you build your business? What could you do to be more excellent to make sure that your company survives? And referrals is one of those magic spots that you are, and one of, if not the one person that has ever walked the planet thought more about. So I just want you to teach us a little bit about that.
Well, let me, because I think this will really indelibly embed this awareness, and it'll galvanize people's desire if I give them a reality check. Okay.
Yes.
So, okay. You've been in rooms and I did this. So anytime I speak, I always ask the audience to stand up if they can honestly say, and I change it, but 20 to 100% of their business comes from either referrals or word of mouth. And usually about 50% of the audience stands up. I ask them to remain, and I want to go through the process so your viewers can visualize it. I'll say, okay, now I'm going to randomly check, and I have time, but I'll go through 20 people, and they'll go, 20%, 500,000, 60%, 400,000, 100%, 10 million. Then I'll say, okay, now remain standing if you can honestly say that you have in place at least one formalized, systematized, continuously adhered to referral generating system that you apply in every situation to make sure that everybody that does business with you, and even people that don't, are set to constantly, when they see precipitating and stimulating like scenarios, people that are in that situation, you get the referral. And everybody except for about 3% sit down. Then I'll say, okay, 2 referral systems, 95% of the remaining 15 sit down. 3, everybody sits down. Then I'll tell them the following. I'll say, look, I've looked at so many industries. We've identified, it used to be 93. Now, believe it or not, Jason, we've got something like 150, and they're not all the time. Some are seasonal, some are when certain elements converge, but we've got all these different internal and external, meaning both you do it and you can also get external sources to do it for you. But then I make a point that is quite profound. I say, see if and I would use a Tony on this, that I'm hallucinating. I believe that a referral generated buyer buys more immediate, negotiates less, buys more, trusts more, so they buy more often, they buy longer, they buy more things, they're more profitable, they cost you nothing, they're more enjoyable, and they refer more people. And if that is the truth, almost every one of you who sat down, who don't have even one or just one referral system, spend money, time, opportunity cost on Facebook, in normal times, trade show exhibits, seminars, webinars, all these things. And yet that is trying to solicit the most outer periphery of trust possible. It takes so long to get that first level of trust over to commitment trust, purchase trust. Even then, you don't have repurchase trust. Right. Whereas with a referral, it's already there. It's instant. Mm-hmm. And I say, what's wrong with this picture? So we try to get everybody to instill and install tons of referral processes. And it's it takes me a while to explain the methodology, but it really is essential. If you don't have referrals, something's wrong with your business. I mean, really, if you say, well, no, I don't get referrals, I would say, okay, there's nobody that shouldn't, even very private, even cosmetic surgeons should be getting referrals, even though people don't
Especially
watch
them.
it. Yeah.
They're like the hitch.
Yeah.
They're like the hitch of the
Yeah.
medical world.
But there's certain, professions and businesses that are sensitive, but your value to your client should be so profound that client will transcend, awkwardness or privacy and the concept of referrals got many psychologies to it, but the one is that you want your client, your patient, your buyer, I don't like the word customer, to feel a moral obligation, a responsibility, and a privilege to help somebody else they know get the benefit that they recognize because you have become masterful at communicating and demonstrating that benefit. They want that for other people in a similar situation. It's a great psychology, but the fact that most people don't even grasp it is tragic.
It's tragic, and it's the cause of a lot of consternation when you hear that 90+% of companies go out of business without a pandemic, right? Within the first 10 years. This is one of the major reasons why they don't think about it. I'll tell you, I'll give people some practical application that I did after learning this concept from Jay. What I did was at that point in time, I had several businesses, and I started with one, and I said, okay, team, we're going to sit down and we're going to look at every single touch point with our client, every single one, whether that's phone calls, whether that's on a job site, whether that's, an email, whether that's our invoices. I mean, down to the gnat's ass on exactly every possible touch point with boxes. So we built a flow chart. Okay. This is what I want to just offer the audience. We built a flow chart from the time that they spoke to us, right? There's other strategies out there about marketing, and we're not into that. What I'm saying is the people, once they hit that purchase decision, and you say they haven't gotten into repurchase, much less referral mode, from that point forward, what is our opportunity in every box for us to gain their trust and their repurchase and their referral every single time? To demonstrate competence, to whatever that box was, whether that was a crew, they're cleaned up, how they treated it, what they said. We broke that down. That was the very first process fabulous. That I ever did. And fabulous. And since then I don't have 93, but I have 40 strategies built out for referrals. And we have 12 that are instantaneously executed in every company that I bought. Right.
I love it.
And because that is it's that you bring your customer acquisition way down. You look and you extend out the longevity of survival for your company by years with having just these strategies. So we put a 13-week rolling cash flow in place, and we build out those 12 referral programs. That's the first thing that I would do in any company, thanks to you. So
that's great. No, it's great. And everybody in some way, more or less, should have at least 3 or 4 referral systems going for them. Because, and again, if you don't get a small to a large percentage, you need to question why. There's a concept that I created called access denied. And there's 10 different things. If you're not getting, the response you want, the opt-ins you want, the conversions you want, the repurchases you want, the upsell you want, the referrals you want, you're being denied access, and there's a reason, cause and effect. Everything is cause and effect.
And it's not that you have a dumb or a pissed off customer. It's not that you have substandard employees. No. It's because your strategy needs to be upgraded.
Yep. Perfectly stated, Jason. Great.
So let's move on to your 5 points as we wrap up the show. I want to make sure that you get those out and remind everybody that the 28th is the best time that you could possibly spend would be with this man in his virtual summit. If he gets a chance, if you get a chance to see him live, it's phenomenal. Yeah. But tell us about these 5 points.
I will. And I should tell you that I've recruited somebody that I mentored. Damon John is going to be on it with me, so it might be really fun.
I saw your interview with him. Fantastic, by the way. Everybody should Google it after this show and go watch the
Oh, that's
interview with
nice.
Jay and Damon.
He's a very wonderful man, and he and I have a very good chemistry together. We respect each other. So real quickly, so right now I look not at closed windows. I look at windows of opportunity that nobody else sees. That's been my stock and trade since I was young. So here's 5 things that you guys should really hit on. First of all, there will never be a window of receptivity more open than right now for companies, media, influencers to want to partner, collaborate, co-brand, refer, uh, uh, uh,
Joint
introduce.
venture.
Yeah, because they all need money. And if you understand the psychology and the strategy of connecting, it's all there. It's all there. All you have to do is figure out who already has access to the market I want, the buyer I want, who's got their trust, who's got the credibility, and vice versa, who's got products and services that my market wants, and you can make deals it will never be available. Number 2 is you met the point. There's so many businesses that are going to or have gone out, and you can get control not of the business. You don't need the business. Well, you mean you can have the business. I like to just buy assets and access. You buy you buy the buyers, the prospects, the URL, the the phone number, any IP, but you don't pay for it now. You pay for it on an earnout, because if you can consolidate it into your business without a lot of increase in your infrastructure, you can make it much more profitable, and you can make the company or the entrepreneur you bought it from more money for doing nothing than he or she is making for trying to stave off ruination. The next thing, very interesting, people don't think of this. Of the 40 million people out of work, it's pretty polarized. A huge portion is on the low end of skills, and that's very sad, and it's not applicable to what I'm going to say, but it's very sad. But a surprisingly large number are super skilled, and they were outplaced because either they couldn't function the way that they were intended to because of what's happened, or they just were too expensive and the employer wanted them off the payroll. They, before they lost their job, they had hard won, meaning they worked very hard to create credibility, trust, access with influencers, decision makers, heads, CEOs, all kinds of different potential buyers that you would give your what to get access to and never could on your own probably ever. You can find these people on LinkedIn. And right now, when they're desperate because they were making hundreds of thousands and now they're getting $1,000 a month from the government and they're starving, can't even pay their Mercedes payment, they are receptive to referring people to you, joint venturing with you, giving you introductions. The next category is equally as fascinating. There's probably 5 million salespeople out of work because either what they were selling isn't being bought, or they couldn't sell it because of restrictions, car salesmen and the like. And you can mobilize them strictly on performance to do all the first 3 things I said, or just go right after clients for you. And the 5th and final one is called option trading, but it's not stock. It's getting control of people's assets, businesses, rights to things, and then either pre-testing it before you have to execute, or actually flipping it. A great example, it wasn't done in an adverse time, but a friend of mine many years ago realized that the Rose Bowl was being used very, very, very infrequently for the Rose Bowl football game, and for UCLA, whatever, 20 weeks a year. Most of the time, except for concerts, it was empty and had huge parking and land. He went and he got the rights to do flea markets every weekend that it wasn't being used. And he just made a long-term, highly renewable option on it. And where he didn't give them any money, he gave them a percentage. He didn't know anything about flea markets, but he took that right and he found the biggest flea market management company and he flipped it to them for a huge cash payment and an override on his royalty. You can do that all day long. Those are 5 interesting things.
Jay, again, amazing. I was taking notes myself because I always learn from you continually. So as we wrap this out, guys, Jay, it's hard for me to express my gratitude for you. It's hard for me to demonstrate, how big of a difference that you've made in my life, and how you've changed my entire last name for going forward, how my family will view the world and how we'll be viewed by the world, came from your commitment to excellence. And I know that there's a lot of people that wish they could say this to you directly, but thank you.
That's so
From
gracious.
the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Well, I am actually thrilled to have had this experience because I'm very impressed listening to you, reflecting on how you express your understanding and the thought of what you must be able to contribute to entrepreneurs in the world. So thank you. I do this. One of the reasons I used to do lots of training, you probably know that. We did $250 million and I stopped. And I stopped for a very unusual reason. We were doing very, very well. We were selling out. But I have probably 100,000 documented success stories around the world, which you could say, wow, Jay, that's very impressive. But it's not, because I've taught these principles to millions and millions of people. And I don't like being intellectual entertainment. I don't want to share theoretical wisdom with people that want to be voyeurs up in the stand eating hot dogs, drinking beer. I don't even want to teach it to people who are redshirting on the bench. I want to teach them to the starters on the field who are playing the game every day. Yes, so I don't do things like the summit very often, and there's no charge for it. We'll probably offer something because people need something, but I'm doing it basically because I have perspective that people need, and I hope I can impact and redirect a lot of people. But thank you. What a privilege, and thanks for doing it on a holiday. That's very gracious of you.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and thanks for being here. And again, your strategies have entered a lot of the charities that I work with. That in turn is saving little girls and little boys around the world. It's feeding people. It's helping people that are affected and impacted by domestic violence. Your reach is far and deep, sir, and I really appreciate you.
That's so gracious. Thanks a lot.
All right. So everybody, thank you very much. You're going to go back and watch this. There's so much embedded wisdom. There's so many 5 to 6 seconds segments that if you get them, if you don't understand the word, or if you do, look them up and dig in, get deep. Like, this is the time. We talk about it all the time on my show, and you guys know me. I'm a very aggressive person, and I want you all to be aggressive during this period of time, but do it intellectually. Keep your emotions low, keep your intellect high, go out there and crush it, because Misfit Nation, the world needs us. I love you all very much, and have an amazing day. Peace. Boom.
Is that all right?
Fantastic.
Oh, good. Thank you. You're very impressive. I was thrilled to listen. You're very, very impressive. You have very commanding understanding, and your intentions are very admirable. Thank you very much. I hope it'd be nice. We haven't done anything like this, and we're one of the things that is very interesting, Jason, and then I'll say goodnight to you, is before this happened, I've been on a dual pension. I've been doing very sophisticated and very expensive consulting, just because I was concerned that I wanted to keep my mental acuity as high and as expanded as I could. And I've been traveling like mad. I was in Italy when this happened, supposed to do the third day of a 5,000 person event. The whole day, it got canceled. I was supposed to do a $16,000 program in Nice, France. I went there and it got postponed. I was supposed to do 5 sessions at traffic and conversion with Roland, and we were going to do about a $4 million sort of a gambit together, and that basically got canceled. And I was supposed to go to Vietnam and also do a $25,000 deal in Singapore, and then Tony's deal, which got moved. And it was very fascinating. I don't like losing $5 million, but What I like was sitting around and slowing down enough to realize that I'm tired of traveling.
Right.
And so I'm more motivated to do interesting group things that I think would be fun and that somebody else can run with, because I want to spend more time doing more interesting things. But I like impacting entrepreneurs. So sort of interesting. But yeah, you're a very impressive man. Whatever happens with this, I'm very, very delighted I got to watch and listen and observe you. It was very impressive.
Oh, you know, that world means the world to me. Like I say, it means the world to me. You've been one of my heroes for a very, very long time, and so appreciative of all the stuff. I've already said it multiple times,
Yeah,
but
that's so great.
I'm just very, very grateful.
No,
And
well, I mean, the greatest way you can express it is make differences in other people's lives. I always said at the end of my seminars, the greatest acknowledgement you give me is not standing up and doing that. It's
yeah,
going out and making a difference, not just in your business, but with your business. Very, very unique distillation. All right. Well, thank you very much.
thank you,
And I
Jay.
appreciate it. And yeah, we should connect more often. You're very impressive. And it
If
sounds
you
like,
ever need me for anything whatsoever, I'm there. I
all
owe
right.
you a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.